Hey everybody, me Joe from Balsa, USA. Welcome to the next episode of the Beginner Build Series. In this episode, we're going to cover getting your aileron servo installed. We're also going to cover getting your ailerons hinged. We're going to cover basically final prep so that the next episode after this one is actually going to be the final episode. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to finish this airframe stock. And then shortly thereafter that, I'm going to have a couple of more videos that come up that shows you some of the mods you can do. So I'm going to try to cover the electric conversion. I'm going to try to cover the tail dragger version. I'm also going to cover the aileron servos in the wings. Instead of a single, you would put them out to the aileron, so you'd have two servos. And also the wing bolt option. So if you wanted to make some small modifications to this, it's not a problem. Make sure you check those videos out and we'll show you just how to do it. Enough talking, let's get to the episode. Okay, now that I have this all set up and ready to go, I can go ahead and start looking at my servo mounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my servo lead to where I'm going to want it. And actually for this, I think I'm going to run it straight out the top instead of going under. Get it set where you think you want it. About right there. This is going to be a good location. And then you can mark where your blocks will go. Now what that's going to do is that's going to leave me a space where I can come in with my hardwood and put my two hardwood pieces, and then that's what I will screw the servo to. So same process as we used before. I've got that set where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and mark the top. And I'm going to take the other piece and do the same thing. And we'll cut both of those off. Check that for a good fit. That should be good to go. Go ahead and cut my other piece off. And actually, after cutting that, I believe I grabbed a piece of balsa that I had sitting over here. So we're going to remark that. Because you definitely want to make sure that this is hardwood. When you get to a small piece like that, if you can't tell just by looking at it, when you cut it, you're going to know. The balsa wood, it's going to cut through just like butter. So I'll show you the difference here. This is the hardwood here for sure. When I cut this, it's going to take a lot more work to get through. This was the piece of balsa. You'll notice the difference. That's how I knew. Go ahead and check the fit. Make sure I got what I need. Both sides. And then I can go ahead and glue these pieces in place. Just going to tack glue them in there for right now. Careful not to get your fingers. Get those tack glued in spot, and then I can check to make sure my servo fits. Looks like that's going to be good to go. And I would put my servo screws in through the block. And it should be good to go. Now that we know we've got a good fit, we can go ahead and fully glue these in. So I went ahead and got the servo installed. I kind of left this up to you guys, how you're going to put your servos in. It really just depends on how you end up setting this model up. I went ahead and put my servo blocks in, screwed my servo to the servo blocks, and then sheeted this in. I'm actually going to leave this bay open. Sheeting's not going to give me much strength here on the bottom anyway. This will all set inside the model, and then that way if I ever have any issues with the servo, it'll be a quick and easy fix, something that I could do at the field without having to worry about recovering anything. What I do when I cover this, I'll cover it up to this point, leave this bay kind of open, and then that way I can get the servo out if I need to. So now that we've got the servo installed, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Okay, so the next step in the instructions is going to be to hinge the ailerons. As we did earlier, we've already got the aileron stock all ready to go. I've rough sanded it here. I've got the hardwood plate installed. Keep in mind, the hardwood plate is going to go towards the bottom of your wing panel. That's where your servo horn will connect. So what you have to do is line up your aileron. You want to leave a little bit of a gap on the end down here, just so that it clears good. It doesn't need to be much, just a teeny little bit. And then what I do is I go in and I mark where I'm going to want my hinges. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 4 hinges on this, and I'm going to do one approximately in the center of each one of the bays. So all you do is you mark it across the stock and the trailing edge. Just give yourself a rough idea where you want the hinges installed. Make sure your marks are nice and visible. Then you can transfer those lines down. Now what you're going to want to make sure that you do with these is you're going to want to make sure you install your hinges about 1/8 of an inch down. That's 1/8 inch down from the top. So when you go to mark your hinges on your trailing edge, you're going to want to bring your line down 1/8 of an inch. Okay? So the easiest way to do that is going to be to take your square, bringing your line down. At this point, you don't really need to do both lines that you made. Those are really just for reference. So just like that, you can see my 4 lines. And then all I'm going to do is come down 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to use a nice metal straight edge. So there's 1/8. There's 1/8. There's 1/8. And then all you need to do is bring that line all the way across. I'm going to check my measurement because that doesn't look to be even. Okay, we should be good to go. So there's my 1/8 of an inch all the way across. And then I just run my line all the way down. And that line right there is going to be the line where my hinges install to. And then at this point, all you need to do is go in and install your hinges just like you did earlier on the build on the elevator and rudder. So just go ahead and follow that procedure again, and we'll come back when you guys are all ready. I do have a quick tip I wanted to show you. Once you get your aileron stock lined up where you want it, you can actually take your Dubro hinge and lay it down on there and use that to make your marks. That way you are sure that you get the marks and the hinges installed exactly where you want them, all the way down. And then all I have to do is bring those marks over, and I know right where I need to cut each hinge slot so that they match up. That's just a quick, easy way to make sure you get consistency all the way across. As you can see here, now following those steps, the aileron is installed and it all should be good. I've got plenty of deflection going in both directions, and now I'll move on to the left aileron. We're going to use the exact same process that we used for the right on the left, and we'll move on after that. So we had some time left on this video, so I wanted to show you what I was talking about. So this wing is set right where it's going to set on my fuselage. And if I let off, you can see I have a severe list. Now, like I talked about before, it's because this aileron stock is an ounce heavier than this aileron stock. And rather than just replace it, I wanted to show you how to fix this if you keep it with what came with your kit. So all you have to do is I've got some of these stick-on weights here. And what I would do with these is I would actually epoxy these in. I wouldn't, they come with some adhesive on the back. I have seen that adhesive after time give up, and then it's going to be floating around in your wing. So what I would do instead of counting on the adhesive that comes on it is I would go ahead and use epoxy. So if I put this down here on the wingtip, and I'm probably going to place it inside the leading edge so I can just put it in the general vicinity. That's an ounce of weight, and that is pretty close. You can see right there that this is perfectly centered. Let me just make sure. So it's just a little tippy still towards the left side. So I do have another 1/4 ounce of weight here. And I'm going to try that out. And as you can see right now, that is perfectly balanced. So if you run into this issue with your own kits, again, like I've said before, we try to catch mistakes like that, or we try to catch stock like that before it leaves the shop. We don't always catch it. Sometimes that stuff gets past us. But that actually looks pretty good. That's one of the most probably overlooked steps I see, even if you still are working with ARFs. A lot of guys don't think of balancing the wing. The wing is actually, the lateral balance is just as critical as your horizontal balance. So your lateral balance, which would be your wings, is something that you're going to want to make sure that you take the time to balance. Your airframes are going to go fly in much better if you actually take the time to do these steps. While you're checking the CG, it's super easy to go on in and check your balance. So now that we're at this point with this build, my very next step is going to be to go through and do a final sand, get everything smoothed out and shaped just exactly the way I want it. This airframe at that point is then going to go into the paint booth. I'm going to get the fuselage painted, and then we're going to get the wing covered and get the final electronics installed, and she should be good to go.